Well, hi there. What I have with me right now is a Gidgee Skink. And if you've never heard of a Gidgee Skink, you're like most of the world, and you should watch this video right here about the 5 greatest lizards a person could possibly own. My guess is, if you know what a Gidgee Skink is, odds are you've already watched this video, and in that case, you're absolutely in the right place. Actually, no matter what, you're in the right place, because you are about to find out about what could arguably be the greatest pet lizard you could ever own. The Gidgee Skink. And we give them a score of 3.4 out of 5. The reason that they get a 3.4 out of 5 is going to come down to our 5 categories, which are handleability, care, hardiness, availability, and upfront costs. Let's start off with handleability. For handleability, we give the Gidgee Skink a 4 out of 5. And the reason we give it a 4 out of 5 is because, well, frankly, they're very, very handleable and mellow. This Gidgee Skink that I'm handling is a skink that has rarely been handled in its entire life. And you can see it's placid, it just hangs out, it's calm, spectacular. They're also very, very, very unlikely to bite. And they've got little mouths that are strong for such a little mouth, but it's not going to be a severe bite if you get one. Their poop is small because they're small. I mean, it would still make a little mess on you, but not like if a tegu poops on you, and that's a wonderful thing. Something that I've mentioned before, and I will mention every time it comes up, is that they don't lose their tail. Any lizard that can't drop its tail makes my day, because that's something I always worry about. Gidgee Skinks do not drop their tails. Their nails are sharp. So when you're handling them, you can feel those little nails, but they're small enough and light enough that it's not like it's going to cut you. It's just sort of maybe like holding a baby water dragon or something. These guys live on rocks, and if you honestly have your setup on rocks, they might get worn down enough that they're not going to scratch you, but if they don't have a good opportunity to grind down those nails, they're pretty sharp, and you'll definitely feel them all the time. They'll leave little red dots all over you, but nothing serious. They can potentially wedge themselves into small places. That can be a bummer. If it gets away and like crawls down into your couch, they'll do what they do in rock crevices, which is go in head first and then expose only this pointy pine cone tail to you, and you'll try to reach in there and grab it, and there's not much to grab onto, and they're very good at holding on. So that's something to look out for, but as you can tell, it's very unlikely that they'd ever do that. And last of all, when it comes to handleability, maybe one of the reasons they didn't get a 5 out of 5 is just that they're little. Any little animal is going to be more fragile and more susceptible to things like being squeezed by a small child. I wouldn't recommend giving these to a child. They are pretty well armored, so for a little lizard, these guys are tough, but they're still little, and that's something to keep in mind. They can get lost, and they can get hurt. When it comes to care, we give these a 5 out of 5. Their care is actually very, very similar to the blue-tongued skink, and if you haven't seen our video on the blue-tongued skink, it's right over here, and you should watch it, because this is going to be really similar to keeping a blue-tongued skink, except smaller. And so that honestly makes them easier to care for in like every way. They're just as easy to feed as a blue-tongued skink. They're going to eat that same omnivorous diet that a blue-tongued skink will eat. Because of their size and because they're a little bit more active than blue-tongued skinks, they're actually able to eat more insects than blue-tongues, which is a really neat feature, honestly, because these guys will chase them around like an Ackie monitor. These guys are like halfway between an Ackie and a blue-tongue, and when it comes to care, they're a little bit like that. And that's also reflected in their basking temperature, because their basking temperature is high. It's really hot, like an Ackie monitor, unless like a blue tongue. So that's one place where it's a little bit tougher. When it comes to hardiness, we give these guys a score of 5 out of 5. Frankly, these are just as good as a lizard is going to get. You definitely need to give them some water so that they don't die of dehydration. Give them the proper basking spot. But if you set them up appropriately, these guys are going to just thrive for you. They're great. Where they drop off a little bit in the score is in availability. We give them a 1 out of 5 for availability, and the reason that they're not very available is because everybody wants one and not that many people even know about them to produce them. Gidgee Skinks tend to be sold even before they are born. So despite the fact that they're bred every year, you might have to wait a very long time to get one if you decide that you want one. And that is definitely a bummer because lizards don't get much cooler than this. When it comes to upfront costs, we give them a 2 out of 5. Most of the things for them will be fairly inexpensive. The enclosure will be fairly inexpensive because it's basically like a blue tongue enclosure, except it doesn't need to be as big. You're going to need good lamps, and those are going to cost you a little bit of substrate, a water bowl, normal things. Those lamps are going to need a pretty good bulb in them because they need to produce a very hot basking spot. Generally speaking, everything about maintaining a Gidgee skink is very affordable. What isn't affordable is a Gidgee skink. So be prepared to shell out a lot of money up front for the animal itself. Everything else will not be that bad. So to wrap up, the Gidgee skink. We give it a score of 3.4 out of 5, mostly because they're really hard to find and really expensive. But if it weren't for that, they would be one of the greatest animals we'd ever seen because they are just unbelievable pet lizards. If you can find one, and if you can afford to buy one, consider yourself forever blessed because it doesn't get much better than this. As always, like and subscribe, and we hope to see you real soon.
Cool.
Never been handled.
Oh, yeah.
Hi there!